All you gotta do is look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. I mean the bare necessities are Mother Nature's recipes that bring the bare necessities of life.
Hello everybody, this is part number 8 of my 2011 College Football Big XII preview, and today we head to Central Texas to talk about those Baylor Bears. Last season, Baylor finally broke through, qualified for a bowl game. As a matter of fact, one point last season actually had a record of 7 wins and only 2 defeats. Not too shabby at all. And even though the defense really let Baylor down the stretch as Baylor lost their last 4 games, Baylor's overall body of work rewarded them with a Texas Bowl appearance, as you can see over my shoulder, as they played Illinois. Baylor returns 9 starters on the offensive side. This offense averaged about 31 points a game. But before I go any further, I thought we would introduce a celebrity, one of the most famous actors of all time, who's actually going to tell us what we think could be the theme for Baylor football the upcoming season. Here he is, the one and only, that's right, Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood. Clint? Mr. Eastwood? Oh, he's not going to be here, huh? Sorry about that. That's pretty depressing if you ask me personally. But if he were here, he might say the same thing I'm going to say, that the upcoming theme for Baylor could be the good, the bad, and the ugly. But first of all, let's talk about the good, and there's plenty of it because of the offense, which I mentioned averaged 31 points a game in 2010. RG3, probably heard of him, Robert Griffin III. How important is he to this offense? Well, I think he to Baylor is the equivalent of the hamburger patty to the hamburger. Take him away, ugh, it's just not good at all. RG3 does it all, except the windows. 3,500 yards passing, over 800 yards rushing, accounted for 30 touchdowns total last season, whether it was running or throwing, and it'll help RG3 with his terrific skills to have all of his receivers back, which pretty much he'll have for the 2011 season. Kendall Wright, the one-time basketball player, leading receiver last year for the Bears, he's back along with Josh Gordon and Terrence Williams. 4 of the offensive linemen return for BU. The center, Phillip Blake's back, along with the right tackle, Ivory Wade, and also the guards. Both guards are back in Robert Griffin Sr. and Cameron Coppold. So you've got experience back on the front. You have to replace, however, that left tackle position, very critical position. Another thing you have to do too, even though I think this is still going to be a pretty good offense, you're going to miss Jay Finley. Finley gained over 1,200 yards last season, had his best year for Baylor, and I think took a big load off of Griffin's back to where you just couldn't focus on RG3. You also had to pay attention to Finley, who put up pretty nice numbers and had 6 yards per carry. So that's not going to be easy to replace. 2 guys that Baylor is hoping can step in and do just as good of a job are 2 guys who saw some experience last year, although limited experience, and that was Terrence Ganaway and also Jared Salubi. So both of those guys will be called upon to try to take a little heat off of Griffin, because you know defenses will have their complete focus on RG3. Now, got to talk about the bad, though. That is the defense, and last season, especially down the stretch, Baylor's defense wasn't the best that you've ever seen. Just like the offense, the defense gave up 31 points per ball game, a little over 440 yards per game, I think is what they gave up total as a defensive unit. And make matters worse, you lose your top 5 tacklers entering this season. No question the defense has got major work to do. A lot of the time, don't be surprised to see them run with 5 defensive backs and 4 down linemen and just 2 linebackers. Elliott Coffey will probably be their leading linebacker, averaged just 4 tackles a game last season, so he'll have more responsibility this year from the middle linebacking standpoint. If we take a look at the defensive backs for Baylor, this is a huge area of concern because you only have 1 full-time starter back, and that's Chance Casey. The one good area for Baylor is the fact that they're going to have some defensive line experience, and this part will not hurt at all for the Bears. returning Gary Mason and Tevin Elliott from the defensive end spots. As a matter of fact, you could see the returning starters there for Baylor up front. But even they have to step up a little bit more for Baylor to be better on the defensive side. Getting back to the defensive backs, and this is one area that, again, I think is bad for Baylor because last season, even though the team had 8 interceptions, not a high number, but at least they had some picks, not one player for Baylor in 2010 had more than 1 interception. The takeaway, giveaway department, if you look at Baylor's losses, they were big time behind in this area. So you're going to give up some if you're Baylor, so the least you can do is come up with some takeaways, and that's where this defensive backfield, which I think is right now, until proven otherwise, to me, a weakness for this team, will have to play as well as they can because not one senior is in this secondary at all. So big time lack of experience, needless to say. Now, talking about the ugly, and to me, it is the schedule. You open up with TCU, and I know TCU may not be like TCU of last year and went undefeated because this year they don't have Andy Dalton at quarterback, and they lost 3 of their defensive linemen. So maybe that helps Baylor, with Baylor being as good a running team as they are. Maybe that's a weakness that they can expose of TCU's. But still, TCU overall is the better coached, more talented team. The game's in Waco, but Baylor will still be a noticeable underdog in that game. The next 4 games after that, I think, are winnable ones. The 2 non-league games after TCU, and then the first 2 conference games at Kansas State. Maybe a slight underdog in that one, and then they should be able to beat Iowa State the following week. This is why I think this part is ugly. Unless Baylor wins at least 4 games after the first 5, this team's not going to go bowling. Because you look at the last 7 games, and you can see on the bottom of the screen, other than the Kansas ball game, it's going to be tough for Baylor to win any of those games. Oklahoma State, can't see them winning those. Missouri, I don't see them winning that either. The Texas game, Texas is going to be a lot better this season, and plus the game will be in December now, so Texas will have a much better understanding of their ball club from so many perspectives, and I think that's a big revenge game for the Longhorns after what Baylor did to them last year in Austin. The Texas Tech game, we'll talk about that in a second. That's in Arlington. So if Baylor doesn't have at least 4 victories entering those last 7, it's going to be tough sledding for the Bears. And I do think the realistic goal is to try to get back to a bowl game, but a couple of upsets I think are mandatory for the Bears to get to that magical 6-win total to try to make it to back-to-back bowl seasons. It will be a bear, no pun intended, for the Bears to make it to a bowl game for the 2nd straight time. And to me, a game to talk about, it is the game against Texas Tech. They have a losing streak against the Red Raiders, including the last 3 games in which Baylor has had hard luck against the Red Raiders. They've lost by 7 points in each of the last 3 meetings. It doesn't matter where they play. Could be neutral site, could be in Waco, could be in Lubbock. It just seems like Baylor can't beat Texas Tech, can't buy a break against the Red Raiders. Last year came close, but fell short in a high-scoring game. So it's a game for recruiting purposes big time because obviously 2 Texas schools playing on a neutral site. If you want to try to win recruiting points with some prospects, beat Texas Tech and show those prospects that, hey, you know, we're an up-and-coming program. We proved it because we finally got through the Red Raiders. Teams will play in Arlington during the second half of the season, and this is one of those games that Baylor has to win if they expect to have a shot at a bowl appearance. That will do it for my preview of Baylor. One more preview to go, the Texas Longhorns. That'll be my next preview, and don't forget, starting August the 8th, I will begin my first of a 3-part series on my preview of the Oklahoma Sooners. That does it for now. So long.